Happy Saturday. Thank you for watching here on YouTube Live. If you happen to be logging in live on the YouTube channel, it is Saturday, June the 21st, 2025. If you're watching this at a later time and date, thank you for watching. Check out the homepage, check out the links that I have there, tons of videos, other links to other platforms that I have. And that'll give you a little bit more of the gist of who I am. So today we're going to talk about some signs that your child might be a psychopath. I know that's a sensitive topic, and there's nobody in the world that would even want to consider that as a possibility. But we have to kind of start to question ourselves like, well, once upon a time, these adult psychopaths were once upon a time children. So even though it is an uncomfortable topic and there's nobody walking the planet that wants to believe that they, you know, especially pride, very proud families and cultures and stuff, there's nobody that wants to believe that they birthed someone that's possibly psychopathic. So I am not sharing this as a diagnostician. Okay, this is not the purpose of it. At the end of the day, please seek out your professional if you have resources to do so, okay, especially in this case, to get proper diagnosis, if you can, if you have the resources to do so. But the reason why I share it is because guess what? Knowledge and what we do with that early on could sometimes be the intervention that never happened for the adult psychopaths that we see walking. Hear me out. Okay. Now, I don't think psychopaths could maybe, be turned into something else because they say it's biological and environmental. But guess what? If you see this and you're a relatively grounded parent, by the time you're able to recognize this, okay, what you all are looking at is a picture of a toddler basically taunting and tormenting his infant baby brother. Okay, so let's get into some of the signs that I researched, okay, to give you an indication that your child might be. Okay, so let me scroll. Give me 1 second here. Okay, identifying psychopathic tendencies in children, as you can see, can be complex, but some early signs is including, first and foremost, lack of empathy. Now, they're talking about toddlers, children, okay? Lack of empathy, persistent lying, manipulation, and a disregard for rules or consequences. In other words, you can beat the living hell out of them and it wouldn't matter, okay? Children exhibiting these traits may also be superficially charming. They may be prone to aggression, and indifferent to the suffering of others. I'm gonna say it again. As a child, indifferent to the suffering of others. I was the total opposite, but let me continue. It's crucial to remember that psychopaths exist on a spectrum, and these behaviors can manifest differently to each child. Absolutely. Okay, so again, they said the lack of empathy, callous, okay, violence, okay, definitely. You'll definitely see that. And they were showing the picture of the toddler taunting his infant baby brother there, okay? And they're not guilty. They don't feel nothing, okay? They don't, okay? Animal cruelty, indifference to punishment. I just said that. Punishment, like I said, the temperament, because there are some kids that, depend on their temperament and all that stuff. They ain't trying, Like me, I wasn't trying to have that. No. No. I did not. Okay, I tried very hard as a little girl. For me, okay, and as a little girl, I was actually very empathic, and I didn't. I would cry a lot at the punishment and suffrage of others because I was in that environment, so I would see it. Okay, so my grandmother would cry all the time. She was dealing with depression and some other stuff at that time, and for many reasons. Okay, for many reasons, lack of her own ability to do healing work or alignment for herself, but also because spell work was on her. And and as a little girl, 4 or 5 years old, I would sit next to her on the side of her bed as she was crying because I felt empathy as a little girl. When um, my grandmother, maternal grandmother, was abusive when I was little, when I was younger, she kind of got out of it somewhat towards the end of her life. And I have to say somewhat, but um, when I was little, she was. She was. Um, I wonder if it's a combination of her lack of healing and the spell work. Because see, these people have been doing stuff for a long time. The powers that be, they've been doing shit for a long time. You know, the entities sending shit on people and attaching it shit to people, and yeah. But so anywho, to get back to what I'm saying, so she was abusive, okay? And as I was little, I tried to avoid a lot of the whoopings, you know, old school, you know. I, I don't like getting in trouble, okay? Now, sibling, totally opposite, okay? Total opposite. Defiant description of what you're reading here. Total opposite. Didn't care. I'm like, damn, bitch. You know, I wasn't saying that as a little girl, but in my thinking, it's like, avoidance. You're gonna make them mad, and they're gonna beat the living hell out of you. Um, so, you know, she didn't. Okay, and unfortunately, as a result, I would witness stuff that I couldn't barely process. I was a little girl. Okay, no little girl should have to be fucking anyway. Let me get out of that. So I would see that with my eyes, and I would cry. I would go sit by this wall heater. Back in the days, they used to have these tall, long wall heaters, and we had one that went from one room to the next. I think it was the bedroom to the living room. But I would go and sit, and I would cry, and I would peep out, like, because one time I saw my grandmother with this extension cord. Yes, they call that discipline. Can you believe that? But anyway, um, I saw that. I was about 5, 6, maybe even a little older. Okay, and I would hear my grandmother, and then my sibling, but she, she was, yeah, heartbreaking. That was heartbreaking for me, and I couldn't handle it. But I'm saying this to say, this ain't about making me seem some kind of way. This is going in alignment with what they're trying to break down when you're trying to determine if your child might be psychopathic, okay? So I didn't take well to visually or knowing and seeing abuse as a little girl. It would make me cry. And then when people were sad, like my grandmother, I would try to comfort her because I was touched. Well, a child that might be psychopathic, they're not. And this is not about, I need to be clear, this is about understanding. Okay, they don't have it. That's all we're saying. That's what the science is saying. They're not. Okay? This is the kids that abuse the disabled kids and shit like that. They don't have it. I recall there was this disabled little girl that grew up in the same place that I grew up in, the neighborhood. They called her Curlin. I don't know what the young lady, name was, and but I can almost still see her. She was like a lighter brown, and she had good hair, like a good hair texture, like maybe she or somebody, a mother or a father or somebody, could have been mixed with something other than black. But the neighborhood, you know, people would always clown, you know, kids can be cruel, but even crueler, you know, some take it to another level. And I remember, I had a memory that came back to me back in 2019. That's when the memory came back. That my sibling, I was 5 years behind my sibling. My sibling, one time, I guess she told me, I don't know if she picked me up because I was kind of tiny back then, but you know, she picked me up, and I think she told me to hit Curlin, and then told Curlin. I don't know why she did that. You know, I was little, so I can't recall like what happened around that and why would she do that. But she did. She told me to. She picked me up, told me to hit Curlin. I think she told the Curlin that she better not, you know, do anything or something like that. Once again, why am I sharing these things? Okay, because we're talking about, I believe that if we can get past our cultural pride and our need to make our families appear to be what they're not, and there could be possible intervention. Whoever psychopaths are today as adults were once upon a time a child. I'm sorry, they didn't come out grown. They were once upon a time a child. And the refusal to look at, and then some of these kids still get abused. I mean, because there's so many things that goes into this, but just think about if parents and caretakers of some of the adult psychotics today that have done some horrific shit to a lot of people and still are as I'm speaking. Just think about what could have been if their caretakers, parents, and environment, first and foremost, that they themselves were sound and stable enough. Shit. First and foremost, nigga. Okay? But then aware and conscious and involved enough, okay, to recognize and intervene and get their kid checked out and see what they can do to change the game before they make them into a, what nigga? Before they end up turning them into the full-fledged psychopathic person, okay? There is a spectrum. Yeah, they don't care. Fearlessness, they don't care. You're gonna beat their ass, so you know what I'm saying? Them be them kind. They don't care. They jumping off shit, nigga. They doing everything. I was the total opposite, but that is the dynamic. The empath, you know, I don't want to get too deep into all that, but it's a strand. It's still one energy, but that's the dynamic. It's on the other spectrum. It's on the other side. Consult professional, of course. There's something else though I wanted to share with that. It says parenting styles. That's what I was talking about. Parenting styles in the environment. That's why I said, so when it's like this, that's the generational curse. Oof, I'm done. That's a topic by itself. That's the generational curse in itself. Because if it's not broken, then that's the cycle, right? We talk about generational cycles. Then if this is why it continues. So you have a family The older you go back, the less likely they were to have any resources. The more likely, you see where I'm going? The family traditions become, we go to church for most cultures, and I'm gonna speak on my culture, but that's what it becomes, especially in poor, when you're poor and impoverished. That's what it becomes. You're in church, but nobody talks about anything. They don't talk about, weird Uncle Ron. And I'm not referencing nobody with that name. I'm just using it as a name. I don't know Ron, okay? But they'll never address that. Everybody pretend like they don't know that and just secret and whisper amongst each other on the telephone. Nobody addresses when there's, parental abuse and even favoritism and, all of these things that is creating a toxic environment. Nobody talks about if the mother, the father themselves are mentally ill. Because, hello, back then you had to be fucking disfigured and a mute before they would even consider looking at you to evaluate you back in the olden days. So all of those things creating, right? Parents that are detached, they're not there. They're too busy running the street. They're too busy, working, latchkey. And I'm not saying this to make any of us feel bad about circumstances. I'm talking about how it slips through the cracks that we might have a psychopathic child. I was told that when I was little. Now, do I know this emphatically to be true? I questioned most of my childhood at this point. Okay, I don't even think, I'm just telling y'all the truth. I don't even think I belong to the bloodline that I think I belong to. I think I look the way that I look because of science, because of nature. The same way people start to say folks who've been together a very long time, that same kind of deal. That's how I feel. And there's some reasons behind that, I'll just say, without getting into the other stuff that came to be. Which explains everything, though, bitch. Back to what I'm saying. I was told that as a baby, so I was an infant, that my sibling, the one that I've come to know as my sibling, the one that I came to know as my eldest sibling on the maternal side, at least the one I thought was my maternal side. I'll say it that way. Okay? I was told, I was an infant, and that I was a crying baby. Hell yeah, I was crying, bitch. It was curses on me, bitch. Huh? Your weird asses was doing curses and shit while you was fucking sacrificing babies to entities, and you shocked that a bitch is crying. Anyway, so I was told that I was crying, and that my sibling went in. I don't know if it was a bedroom, if it was a bassinet, I don't know, possibly a bassinet, because for her to be able to reach at age 4, yeah, it had to be pretty low. So that she went in, and I was crying because I guess I wouldn't stop crying. And she picked me up by my head, by the neck, and carried me as my dangling body, choking. and said, here is your old baby. That's what I'm told now. And if that is true, our tendency to make light of this kind of stuff is why we have people that grow up to be monsters. This is why we have people who become lifetime people that can't stay out of jail or off crack. This is why we have situations where people become addicts in a different form, chasing and looking for love in all the wrong places. This is why so many of the issues that we have is it starts with the failure to get something identified early. Now, I'm not putting all the responsibility onto the parents and the caretakers, no doubt. Okay, because again, even if they had that, it's once they get of age is what they do with that from there on. And it's for psychopathy, it's something with their brain. Okay, it's deeper, and they have to take the baton once they get up to a certain age and decide to continue to do the things to help themselves. If they don't, then they will still veer off into the wrong path. But at least the likelihood, we are increasing the likelihood of minimizing some of this stuff. Because then it'll be noted, there will be records, and so you see what I'm saying? How many lives could we have possibly saved? I think of things like that, like how many lives, how many people didn't have to die or suffer some kind of tragedy, all because there's too many psychopaths loose in the world. Just regular and shit, just out and about, like, whoop, and shit just outside, bitch. You know what I'm saying? The fuck? I'm laughing because it's not funny. I'm just laughing because to me, it's like, it's jaw-dropping. And yet we be concerned about some other shit. That's another video too, because I'm like, man, this is all bullshit. All of it. We got psychopaths walking, nigga. You know what I'm saying? Just free as a bird. And they worrying about folks like the collective, little old us and our kids. Nigga, y'all got full-fledged psychopaths walking this motherfucker, running the show, bitch. Like, you got this shit. You got this shit fucked up. You looking in the wrong direction. You looking in the wrong direction. We ain't the problem. Anyway, back to what I'm saying. A little bit of humor there. So, environment plays a role. Okay. We might say some stuff is cute and we laugh, We might need to look at that. I have a memory of when my son was a baby, when he was about 8 months, 9 months, and his cousin is a year older than him, or a little under a year. And we were out in Long Beach, and I don't know what happened to where it was him and his oldest cousin standing by the toilet, and she was pouring water on him. She was picking the water. I don't know if she was doing it with her hands or the cup. She was getting the water, and she was just pouring it over him, and he was just like standing there shaking and trembling. That's not as harsh as, the experience of, being picked up as an infant by your neck. But some of the cruel behavior, like, what was that? Why did she do that? He was just standing there. Why did she do that? And we, coming from a family of abuse and still have our, I was a young mama. I was a teenage mama. So I was, It's not cute. And you know what I want to say for the record, you know what I'm saying? If this helps different cultures, listen, stop romanticizing and stop glamorizing, rather, these types of traits, thinking that, oh, they so cute and sassy and have an attitude. You can be cute and sassy and have an attitude, but they may not be psychopath, but just be willing to look at that and start watching to see if you're getting some patterns, not one isolated incident, but start watching. The moment you see them do something that's kind of cruel and mean and hurtful, that's your invitation to start watching and maybe, you know, okay, maybe there's some other stuff going on, and get that looked at. You know, I come from a culture when my son was diagnosed, you know, at that time, the culture was still in this energy of not even really wanting to accept that or feeling embarrassed. Like it was, you see what I'm saying? And a lot of cultures would hide stuff for that reason. You know, like, he just fine, girl. He just fine. Ain't nothing wrong with him. Shoot, ain't nothing wrong with him. He's smarter than all of us in here, very well. And there's truth to that to a degree, but you know, to force those type of people to have to suffer through the world from a different kind of operation is cruel. Our priorities as a culture, as a nation, but I'm going to take it back to culture, you know, as a culture needs to change. This psychopathy, sociopathy, which is now sociopathic, meaning we want to appear to be. Our appearance and our reputation to such a degree is at the expense of the health of the family. Is at the expense of the health and the well-being of all members, each individual member of the family. Because our need to look like the Obamas 2.0, our need to look like the Kennedys 2.0, our need to look like, you know, some famous couple, hashtag couple goals, our need to look like, you know, some royal couple in history trumps if we're vital and healthy inside and out. And then we wonder why catastrophe, you know, or these cycles. Then we look up and we all feel some kind of way, and it's a shit show and it's a mess. But there's been a trail of blood and mess that have been caused by the failure of addressing psychopaths and sociopaths early. The catering to a performance-driven country, the catering to this performance-driven, accolade-driven, appearance-driven, has only further cemented and solidified these cycles. And so it is. Time release, every now and moment, every time. Increase, 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 pain. Increase, agony, misery, fatality. Increase it on them every time. Green reverse projection, more love and light here, More death and destruction there. Love and light here, death and destruction there. Love and light here, death and destruction. Ease and grace here, chaos and conflict and war. Once humanity and our culture do away with that, we might get some progress. Psychopaths, sociopaths become stalkers. They become weird magicians. Okay? These are the ones that become weird magicians, weird spiritualists, weird religious leaders, because nobody dealt with that. These are the ones that start, they become pedophiles. These are the ones that do incest and, sick, the fucking animal, and do shit to disabled people. Wake up, America. Stop being fake. Wake up, world. Wake up, Western society. Love it. So, hope that helps, okay? And go and get the help if you can get the help, but pay attention. And I want to say, even as a teenage mom and all of my flaws, I did pay attention. Now, hindsight, I realized like a lot of this stuff is due to spell work, okay? Because again, targeted individuals have been targeted from the beginning, as have their children. Okay, so that means people was doing weird shit from the beginning, which created, certain things from the beginning. But beyond that, I was paying attention, and I did notice that there was something different. And from what I was able to do, I did take the steps that I could take to see what was going on. And over time, I went down the path with him. I got him in good programs. I participated with these programs. It's funny, people try to create, this image of me being a bad mom, but history is written. I was fully invested in my son's school years. I wasn't off somewhere else. Okay, I was fully invested. I went to the programs. I got myself educated. I had him connected to programs fully. Went to all of his meetings, participated. But these people tried to make it seem like I was a bad mom. They wanted me destabilized so that I could seem like a bad mom. And that I'm going to make each and every last one of them pay severely. I am making them pay. And every time, every day, every time energy is thrown at me, there's more destruction they have to experience. Every time energy is thrown at my son, there's more destruction that they have to experience. Every time they come on here and start doing spell work, there's more destruction that they have to experience. and the innocence that's connected to them. Because again, this is that psychopathy we're talking about. And because nobody got a hold of these psychopaths, this is why innocents in their lives are going to be stacked up as casualties. The refusal of addressing these psychopaths is why some of the innocents connected to them end up suffering.